All right. So we are here with Brittany Hennessy. You want to give a little background of yourself real quick before we get started?
Yeah, I'll give the quick blurb. So one, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for submitting your questions so I can answer them. I'm super excited. I've been in this industry for a very long time. I was a blogger in the very, very beginning, so like 2007, and I got nominated for awards, love blogging, then moved into social media where I got to be the brand ambassador for Nivea and I got to hang out with Rihanna. Everybody really likes that story. And
Mhm.
then when influencer marketing started coming around, I got my first job at an agency because they were looking for someone who spoke blogger, which I did. So I worked there and did a lot of television, like Travel Channel, Food Network, and like CPG. So like everything from like Little Caesars Pizza to like cultural probiotic vitamins. But I wanted to do more sexy brands. And so I went to Hearst. I started the influencer department there. So I did literally every brand under the sun because I was booking influencers for 17 Cosmo, L Esquire, Harper's Bazaar, Road and Driver, like women's health, men's health, everything. So while I was doing that, I learned a lot of influencers didn't really know what they were doing. And so that's why I wrote my book, Influencer Building Your Personal Brand in the Age of Social Media, which at this point I think has sold like 100,000 copies. It's in like 7 languages. There's a hardcover, an audiobook, which I read, really exciting. And it's just let me do a ton of things. And recently I was on the Collective Voice affiliate marketing team. Now I'm on the Howl affiliate marketing team and I run like creator sales there. So just always doing things with creators and just making sure that they can make the most of their brand and their business. So always happy to talk to students who have questions about that so that you guys can be super informed when dealing with creators.
Awesome. I love it. Just really quickly before we get into the student questions, how would you describe the difference between affiliate marketing and influencer marketing?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think influencer marketing categorizes the whole thing. That's the whole, and even on top of that, you've got the creator industry, which is just people who create. You hear creator economy a lot. Underneath that, you have the influencer marketing industry. And I say like a difference between an influencer and a creator. All influencers are creators, not all creators are influencers. So an influencer means when you speak, people listen to you and then they do the thing you're telling them to do. And one of the ways influencers make money is through affiliate, which if they say, here's my shirt, here's this lip gloss, here's this stroller, here's this vacation I took, use my link, then they make commission. And so they can make affiliate money when most of the most popular form of influencer marketing is sponsored content, which we see, which is like, hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm talking about the new Maybelline lip gloss. That's what people see. That's the most common where the brand is paying them. They get a brief, they get talking points, and then they try to make the content their own, but they're essentially like an advertisement. And those two can be combined because you can do that advertisement and then get paid for every time someone makes a purchase. So they are connected and they're all under the big umbrella.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of
Um,
course.
so let's dive straight in. I've categorized the questions kind of in these areas. So I'll tell you like what the area is, and then we'll go into the question. So I think we have some students that are interested or that have served as an influencer. I know we have
Mm-hmm.
a student that kind of went viral on TikTok. So from an influencer perspective, for someone who wants to be an influencer, what are some of your top strategies for somebody that kind of wants to like reinvent their brand or create a brand from an influencer perspective?
So I think the first thing you need to think is, are you going to do this as a hobby or are you trying to make real money? I think when people float between the two, that's when it's the hardest because at the end of the day, if you want to make money, it is a business. It's not always about what you want to do. Whereas if you're doing it more for a creative aspect, you can just make this reel that you love, even though the algorithm might hate it or it won't make you any money. You can make art. And so again, a lot of creators make art. They make stuff because they love it and makes them feel good. There's not necessarily a path to monetization. Whereas if you're like an influencer who wants a big business, everything is like, well, how does this time that I'm spending translate into dollars? So that's the first one, figuring out how do you want to do that. The second one is figuring out who's your audience going to be. Are you talking to your younger self? Are you talking to people who look like you? I just saw a blog the other day that's women talking to men about what they should wear and giving them dating advice. And I was like, oh, that's fun. And so, like, who's your audience? How old are they? what do they want to learn? Just understanding like, who are you serving? Because that helps you make a lot of decisions when you're not sure what to do or which piece of information to take. And I think the third one, if you're going to make money, is just diversifying your revenue streams. One, knowing that you can make money, and there is so much money in this industry. I'm shocked by it every single day when I just see these numbers. And just knowing that you can do sponsored content, you can have a Patreon, you can do affiliate, you can, if you're a stylist, sell your styling services, you can sell all sorts of things. You can even sell a course on like how to get into Vanderbilt, and like somebody will buy that. So when you're thinking about it, you know, it's like we're in this age where like if you create, it can be monetized. And if you want to go that route, always remember that, because there are paid communities for people who own succulent, like the plants, and people are paying $50 a month to talk about their plants. So if
Wow.
that doesn't tell you anything is possible, I don't know what will.
Succulents are supposed to be the plants that you can't kill. I'm not going to
Yeah.
see how many I've killed, but I have found two that thrive on my neglect. So I'm rocking with those two,
See,
and
there you go.
that's just it. Okay, again, from the influencer perspective, like
Mhm.
what happens if you are like you feel like your growth has plateaued, or you have to take a break, or you're trying to transition into another topic? Do you have any advice for an influencer that's experiencing any of that?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, influencers get a lot, they burn out a lot. And I think the core of that is the three things I said before, knowing like who you are, why you're doing this, who you're trying to help, because those other things stop mattering as much when you are focused on it. Because my brand, I help creators, and like it's exhausting, especially because a lot of people I help don't listen. And so then I'm like, why did we just spend all this time for you to not do what I told you to do?
Yep.
So it does get frustrating, but I think I always remember like, but there are people who like I've changed their lives through like coaching. And so like those things, like the why I'm doing this, help you with all of that. But if you are feeling burnt out, you need to take a break. Take a break. Yes, it's hard to get back into the flow. Yes, the algorithm will penalize you for it, but so what? Because what is the point of working for yourself if you are working yourself harder than a job would work you? Like you can take PTO at a company. You know, I took a 6-month break from Instagram and just focused on my newsletter and my community. And yes, you can feel it in like, you know, your growth. You can definitely feel it in your monetization, depending on what you're doing. But I was so much happier because Instagram was really getting on my nerves, and I was extremely frustrated, and like I don't have this business to frustrate myself, and I doubt anyone becoming a creator is doing it so that they can do what Instagram wants them to do. So that's why that creator part, that art part is important, because at the end of the day, you still have to be happy with the content you're making. And if you found your audience and you're serving them, even if it takes longer than you'd like, it will work out. And like the original people are like the greatest testament to that. Like they've got millions of followers, but always because they just kept going, even back when there were like no guidelines, no books, no courses, no rules. They were like in the dark, but they knew like they wanted to help this person. So they just kept going. And now, like 15 years later, some of them are monstrous. You know, they're rivaling like Estee Lauder, which is crazy, but that's where we are.
Nice. Speaking of that, do you have favorite platforms that you would say like, oh, this one is really good for influencers, or I really like building community on this platform, both from the influencer perspective and from a company perspective?
So I think the way you have to look at it is, what is your strength? I hate Instagram because I am not a visual person at all. I am a writer, which is why I write. I used to love Twitter, but it got so hateful that like I don't go over there. And like even like YouTube, and like my favorite platform is TikTok, because my favorite platform of all time was Vine. I love short form video because I love comedy. And on Vine, if you couldn't be funny in 6 seconds, like that's all you had. And so now everybody's got all this time in the world to be funny. And I'm like, you had 6 seconds back then. So I love those platforms for consuming content, but I liked Clubhouse because I didn't have to put on a face to like go on there. But I make carousels on Instagram. So if you look at my Instagram, it's text. There's no photo. I don't do photos. I don't do videos. And that's what works for me. If you love creating video and editing, like YouTubers love editing and like crafting that story, there is no amount of money you could pay me to do that. Zero. I hate it. I don't want it. I'm not interested. So like, I'm not a YouTuber. But if you love that, be a YouTuber. If you love short form video, do TikTok. If you love photos, as much as Instagram is penalizing people for taking photos, take your photos and put them on Instagram. Because again, and you'll hear me say this so many times, your personal passion and desire to do this will be the only thing that keeps you going when you're not growing, when you're burnt out, when you thought you'd make more money than you're making. You have to love what you're doing. And if you're forcing yourself to do things just because they're trendy or cool, that is not enough, and you will quit. And like, how sad would it be if you quit right before everything was about to change? So just do whatever it is that makes you happy. And then every once in a while, you're going to have to do some things you don't want to do. Like, I'm on Instagram. I would prefer not to be, but I'm on it. But I make it work for me, and I don't force myself to like make reels where I'm like pointing and tapping and dancing like other people I know, because like I'm not doing that. And I just don't, even though I'm sure my follower count would be bigger if I did, but I'm not dancing on the internet. I'm sorry.
That is fair. I was just telling somebody like those Instagram videos where they're like wagging their finger at you. I hate those.
I
I'm like,
can't do
"Don't be
it.
so judgmental. Just give me the content."
That's right.
All
That's
right.
right.
So skipping over the corporate perspective or the business perspective for a quick second, I want to talk about metrics. What are
Right.
your favorite ways to encourage people to like business and influencer to capture metrics? What are some
Sure.
KPIs that people can look to? How do we like go back to that ROI?
Yeah. So this will weave in the answers on the corporate part. It is figuring out what's the point of the campaign. And so sometimes there's two types. There's brand awareness. There's actually three types. There's content generation, brand awareness, and conversion. And so if you're a creator, you've got to figure out, or an influencer, where your strengths are, and the people who fare the best are the people who have all three strengths. So they've got the, why is this ringing so loud? I don't know what is happening here. They've got all of the strengths. They can create content. So a brand might say, we're launching a new product. We need UGC, so user generated content. And they might hire an influencer to just shoot the content and give it to us. And now we own it instead of using like horrible stock photography. So you can be a creator that just creates contents for brands. And for them, their metric is number of pieces of content. So how much content can they get from you? If a brand is doing awareness, that's like they have a launch and they just need people to know about it. So for them, that's going to be how many views, how many replays, how many likes, how many comments. They want all of that. And then if a brand is interested in conversion, so it's like, okay, we have the content to promote it. We are promoting it. Now we need to see if people buy it. That's the affiliate piece where they want to know, but how much money did we make? How many of these products did we sell? And so that's why a creator who can do all three of those things can get hired no matter what the brand is trying to do at any given point in time, but that's usually one of those three. And then if you're creating, you're pitching yourself, you also want to keep track of your saves and your shares, because those are not public, but anyone can like a comment. Anyone can like a piece of content. I like stuff from my friends just because they're my friends. I'm like, oh, that's cute. That's cute. But in order for me to save it, that means it's good enough that I want to come back to it. And in order for me to share it, it's good enough that I'm co-signing it. And those are the real metrics of, is something good or not? I have a post that I think got like 300 likes, and I was like, oh, but it got 400 and something saves and like 600 shares. And I'm like, yeah, this is a good piece of content, because that's how you know if you did something worth holding, worth returning to, or worth sharing. And when you're pitching yourself, that's more important than how many likes you have, because anybody can buy likes. You can't buy saves and shares, at least not yet.
Right. Yeah. 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 What about like cross platform? Like, if do you advise that companies go to influencers for a specific platform, or influencers
Yes.
like focus on a
Yes, because
specific
it's
platform?
all, it's different. You know, you, for the sake of time, like if you're really busy, you can just take the same piece of short form content and throw it across all platforms. You can make it a YouTube short and a reel and a TikTok. Except if you consume content on those platforms, you know it's different. Like TikTok is very much like, you know, to do it like age old. In the beginning, there was YouTube, and like to subscribe to somebody's YouTube channel was like a commitment. Like that was like akin to like me inviting you over to my house. Then Instagram came and it was less formal. It was like, okay, I looked at your feed, cool, I'll follow you. Then TikTok came and I'll follow you because I liked one video that you made, and I don't even know what else you make. Like you could have all kitchen videos, and this is one video about your dog, and I'm like, oh cool. And then I'm like, what are all these kitchen videos? You know, so like you don't even know. So like the followers have changed, but the way people consume content and how they react to it, you know, is also different. So like TikTok is more of that short, quick. Instagram has a lot more of that like gimmick, you know, like they want you to like read the caption. So it's like looping. So like you do have to know what wins on every platform. And YouTube is like video Google. So it's like the SEO, people are searching for an answer to something. So yes, you can repurpose, but I would make sure you are creating content when you're making it, knowing which piece is going to go on what platform, because there is a reason why something on TikTok flops on Instagram, because it's just not the same. And so it's more work, but if you're going to do it anyway, you might as well do it right. And brands are the same way. They want people who speak TikTok fluently. And a lot of older influencers who were YouTube first, like didn't make the jump to Instagram. And a lot of people who were Instagram first didn't make the jump to TikTok because they just couldn't change the way they made content. But the people who are the most successful are the people who, again, can do all of them and flip based on the requirement. That's really what you need to be able to do.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Let's talk a little bit about compensation. I feel like this is
Mm-hmm.
like behind the door, peeking
Mm-hmm.
and really like the under the hood type stuff. So, how do you go about monetizing this? Like, how do you put a price tag on it? How do you land that first deal?
Yeah. So depending on where you're at, anyone can sell UGC. And so there are a bunch of companies. If you take really good photos, you can just Google like influencer UGC companies. And there are companies where you can literally sell them. You can put your photos in their library. And if a brand buys it, then you get paid. So you don't need any sort of follower account. You can just do that. If you want to get paid for your community, then you have to start to build that. So, and that's not even about follower account. That's more about authority. I have a friend who only has like 10,000 followers, but she's top of the line in her niche because she talks to parents of multiples. So people who have twins and triplets. There are but so many people who have twins and triplets. So like how big can her audience actually be, you know? But if you have a twin or a triplet, you know who this is, you follow her. So she charges through the roof because she's like, you don't want me, who else are you gonna get? And so that is that community, that expertise. So like when you pick something, I think the worst thing that ever happened to this industry was like lifestyle. People who are like, oh, I just like talk about my life. And like they did that so they could take money from anybody. It's like, I'll take travel money, beauty money, home money, food money, which is great for your wallet. But in terms of expertise, they're not an expert in anything. And like, I think there are so many influencers at this point that like people want experts. So whatever it is that you would do for free, that's probably what you should do on social. It's like if you love beauty, if you love fashion, if you love travel, fitness, make sure you are like very good and you're like on top of like the trends and everything. And so that's how you would sell that. And you would sell it based on like how much your word is worth. And then if you can convert, if you have like affiliate money, if you like do affiliate, then you can charge because you know how much money you can make a brand. So even if you have 5,000 followers, but you know, if you post something, everyone's going to buy it, you can charge more than someone who has 100,000 followers but can't move product. And so there are all sorts of ways to like figure out how exactly to price and like all sorts of formulas. But in general, like nobody should really do anything for free unless you really, really want to. And like you're probably starting at like everything starts around like $100, $250 because it costs money to make content, you know. If you hire a creative agency, they're not influencers, but they're still going to charge you to make content because content creation is not free. And so that's like where you start. I have like a template that I use for pricing and I'll send it to you so you can share it with the class. You guys can just plug your stuff in and get some numbers, but don't tell anybody because I charge a lot for it, but I'm going to give it to you for free.
Well, we appreciate that. And I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, but when you
Yes,
talk
ask
about
them. And anything you don't get to, if you want to send it to me, I'll happily answer them and send it back so everybody can
oh,
get their
awesome. That'd be great.
questions
Thank you
asked.
so much.
Yeah, of course.
Talking about like the future of influencing and
Mm-hmm.
regulation. So I know there's some like regulatory things that influencers are supposed to be doing, but they
Right.
don't always do it.
Mm-hmm.
And with the future of AI and have like that influencer, I can't remember her name, but the influencer that's like not real, but she
Oh,
looks
Michaela or whatever her name is.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, something like
I
that.
saw her on a billboard the other day.
I can't believe it. Like when somebody told me about that, I was like, I don't believe this. Like I cannot wrap my head around it. What are you seeing? What are you thinking? Like, how is this going in the future? Are there going to be more regulations? Is it going to be like more intense and people actually have to follow the
Right.
rules
So right
or
now you have to follow FTC guidelines, which means if you are being paid to talk about something, if you could possibly be paid if you were gifted, you have to tell people that so they don't feel hoodwinked and bamboozled. Because obviously, if you're talking about how great something is and you got paid, well, maybe it's not that great and you're just saying that because they paid you. So that was more of a concern in the beginning because influencers didn't hold their audience so close to the chest, and they were, again, especially the lifestyle girlies, were willing to sell literally anything. Now I think that there's more on the line. There's just more money to go around. You can say no to a lot of deals, and like your value as an influencer is actually judged by how much stuff you turn down, not how much stuff you take. So there's less of that. You still have to like disclose, and now it's like in your contract that like you have to use this hashtag, you have to say ad. So like we're at a place where like that makes sense. In terms of the AI stuff, you know, there's always going to be a reason to like do something the easy way, but at the end of the day, that's why like community is important because like an artificial influencer doesn't have a community. They just have followers because they don't share with you. You're not talking to them. So they can be used for UGC and they can be used for conversion, but they'll never have community, which is why that's like the part you have to hold on to as an influencer and really knowing who's following you and like they're your friends. It's a little weird because like then you get like semi-famous because like a few times I've had people like come up to me on the street and like that is weird because like I'm not famous except on our corner of the internet, I'm actually very famous, which is it's strange when it like happens in real life. But you build that community so that those people love you, they trust you, and they want you to do well. And I think as long as you can keep that, it doesn't matter what we have robots doing. It doesn't matter what gets really digital. There's always going to be someone who wants to be able to talk to a human and get an answer, which is why even though banking is automated, we're just like hello, we want a person, you know, and I think content is the same. We can see it on a model, we can see it on a website, but at the end of the day, we're still going to want a person who looks like us, you know, or like has our same tastes to tell us, is this something worth getting? So I think at the end, when a lot of stuff gets sent to the robots, influencer marketing like won't really be one of them because people like people. And so this is probably like a safe industry, much more safe than like banking or like legal or like even medicine. I don't know. They'll get replaced with robots before influencers will, because that's just how it works.
okay, I like it. Very authentic take. And speaking of authenticity, how would you like what's your take on influencers being authentic? Because at the end of the day, you know they're being paid, but they have to do this like balancing, juggling act of being authentic, but also being paid for it. Like, is there
Yeah,
a
I think influencers aren't spokesmodels. So like Jennifer Lopez is a great example of someone who like endorses alcohol, but we all know JLo doesn't drink. So, but she's a spokesmodel. You're not supposed to believe that she drinks it. She's just supposed to look nice doing it. So you want to copy her. That's her purpose. And like she serves it well. I think influencers don't know how to not be authentic. It's just not a thing. They don't know how to like lie really. I think in the very, very beginning, because all of a sudden there were all these brands that were like throwing $10,000 at people to be like, hey, talk about this thing you've never used. Like, I don't know if I would have been able to turn down that kind of money back in the day. Like people were like, you're gonna pay me all of that. Like if I do 10 of these, I could make $100,000. Like, so I think it was very different. And like there weren't a lot of rules. And like you're like, well, what's the difference between like this and like an advertisement? You know, it really was a lot of, but now it's a little different. I think there are enough people who have enough niches and the brands have given influencers enough wiggle room to like talk about things in a way that's comfortable. And you definitely can talk about something that you've been paid to talk about, even if you haven't tried it, because it could be, hey guys, I'm here to tell you that such and such brand has a new lipstick. It's coming out next week. Here's what they told me about it. Obviously, I haven't tried it yet, but if you liked this product, and this product from them, you'll probably also like the new one. So check it out when it drops. That's not me endorsing it. That's not me saying this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. It's literally me just telling you something is available. And like that's a good way to get around it. You're not going to lie and say I used it and I loved it and it's not and you haven't tried it. But you also don't have to have experienced everything and endorse everything to be able to promote something for a price. You just can't lie. As long as you don't lie, you're in good shape. And I think in general, most influencers don't lie because their only currency is that their audience trusts them. And if you lose that, well, you might as well quit because now you have nothing. And so I think that used to be a big question, but I think most influencers would quit than lie to their audience at this point. And they definitely turn down a lot of money. So,
Okay,
yeah.
good to know. From a company perspective, how are
Mhm.
companies finding influencers? How are they choosing the right influencer, or how to
Yeah.
balance the influencers like natural audience and vibes with what they want them to kind of push? How does that work?
So now it's very easy because there's all this tech where you can just type in influencer that has this in their bio and such, and then just hit it and it'll spit out a list. We did not have that in the beginning. We literally were just scrolling through Instagram, looking for people and putting them in an Excel document. Now it's a totally different game. So super easy. And also, you know, if a brand is trying to get into the luxury market, they'll look for luxury influencers. So they're either trying to amplify an audience that they have or tap into an audience that they don't, and they use influencers to like fill those gaps. But that used to be the hardest part of this job, and now it's probably the easiest just because there's all this tech, and really it just is putting together the right roster. It's the same as like building like a basketball team. You need these players and then they all have to fit within this budget you have. And so the art now is not can you find that influencer, it's can you put together a roster that will check all the boxes and stay within budget. And that is just only something you can get from practice, because at the end of the day, these are all people, and someone who you think will perform in this way, when it comes down to it, may not actually be able to do that. And back in the day, the algorithm also wasn't affecting everything. So like if someone usually got X number of views, you could assume they'd get X number of views when you hired them. Now that's not true. Someone could get X number of views and the piece of content they post flops. And you're just like, what happened here? And so that's more difficult. But in terms of like, you guys are lucky. In terms of like finding influencers, there's tech now. You just like put in like what you want, hit search, and it'll like shoot out a list, which I'm so jealous.
How do you see companies? Well, I forgot my question. I forgot it. It was a good one too. Okay. Let me see. What else? What do you think is some kind of criteria that companies are looking for to partner with influencer? Is it just about their audience, or is there more?
So when they're looking for partnering, lots of times it's about the audience, if that's what they're trying to reach. Sometimes they want like your brand name. So like they want to be able to say, this person likes this product, especially if you're like an expert in the industry. So it depends on what they want. That's why you have to make sure at the end of the day, there is something that makes you different, because there are so many influencers now. That's why a lot of the original influencers are very boring and like would not make it if they had to start today, because when they started, there was no competition. There were only a few. And so you could be borderline basic and you'd crush it. Now, those people wouldn't make it at all. Now you actually have to be very good at something. So that's really all you have to worry about is what is the thing you can be better than everybody else at? And then just advertise that, and people who want that will find you. So some people are just, they can make anything funny. And sometimes like a brand is like, this product is boring. We need someone who can make it funny. If you're known for being able to make anything funny, those people are going to come to you. If some product has like really complicated ingredients and you can explain anything difficult and make it simple, they're going to come to you for that. So it's really like, what can you do better than anybody else, and stick to that? Because yes, you will be able to do less deals, but the deals you get, you can charge more money for it, and brands will expect to pay more because you're an expert. The same as college. It's like, that's why you go and get a major, so that you're better at this than everybody else. Same thing in influencer marketing. You can have a lot of things that general education requirements, general education, like stuff that you do, but make sure you have like an expertise where you're like, no, 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 no. If this is what you want, like I'm the best. And it doesn't matter if you have 5,000 followers or 1,000,000 followers, just be the best in your category. So when they're looking for that, you're the obvious choice, which is I think the most important.
Awesome. Um, so from the brand's perspective, they're putting together this brief, kind of telling the influencer like what they want them to do. What are your like best practices or things that like absolutely have to be in there? And then what's the timeline? So I know influencers' timeline are probably a little bit different from the company perspective. What should students know about that timeline from both perspectives? Like, is it waiting for an influencer to pitch a brand? Or are you waiting for a brand to find you? What does that timeline
Right.
look like? And then
So for
brief.
the brief is usually like how they want the content to look and feel and things you have to say. Some companies are very light with the brief. They're like, listen, here's the product, go do what you do. Other companies are very tight with the brief, and that content usually doesn't perform well because it ends up being so far away from what the creator would have made that her audience or his audience like does not respond to it. So smarter brands know like the less restrictions you put on a creator, the better the content will perform. Like you pick them because they're good. Let them do what they do. So it usually will have like things like, you know, especially like things are sensitive. It's like if it's like an alcohol brand, you're not allowed to talk about driving, obviously. If it's like lingerie, they'll usually say like you have to wear like a robe, you can't just be out in your bra. Like they'll have like certain restrictions, certain specifics, but mostly it's like this is how to pronounce it. You must say like Ulta's thing is like they're Ulta Beauty. You can't just say Ulta. It's Ulta Beauty is like the name of the company. So like it'll have those specifics, but in general, briefs are not as crazy as they used to be because they understand the more restrictions you put on an influencer, the less well it will perform. And then just in terms of like how things work, usually budgets are concentrated around key moments. So it's a launch, it's a change in season, like it's back to school, it's, you know, new year, new me in January. So they have budgets that they'll allocate towards that. And they usually start booking 3 months in advance. So like if you want to be in a Mother's Day campaign, they probably cast that in February. It's probably done already. But always people are at the last minute, like, hey, can you do this for Mother's Day? It's next week. And you're just like, what? You do it, you just charge extra. And then if you're an influencer, you can always pitch brands. But if you do your research, you should know when they're hiring creators so that you can time it. Because if you don't time it right, then they'll go, we love you, but we don't have anything for you right now. So if you know that you would want to do something for Mother's Day for them 3 months before that, you should write them and say, hey, I have this really great idea for Mother's Day. Can we talk about it? And then that's how that would work.
Do you have to know them prior to pitching them, or can you cold pitch? And then if
You
you
can cold pitch. You can definitely cold pitch. You can cold pitch. You can find them on LinkedIn. You can send a DM. So it's again, this is something it's easier now. There are also like a ton of platforms you can sign up for, where like you put your name in a system and then that's what they search when they're looking for influencers. So the most important thing is just being where people are looking, but those things are like readily available now, which again, 10 years ago, we didn't have any of that stuff.
So I know, like, if you are an athlete, you have a reel, like a highlight reel. If you are, you know, a singer or something, you have like this media kit.
Mm-hmm.
Does the influencer need to have a media kit, or do they just have their following and some metrics?
I think they can do lots of times you're not going to need a media kit. Most of the time, I want to see like your work, and I can just see that by going to your Instagram or your TikTok. So a media kit is really all of the things I can't see. So like telling me why you're an expert, giving me testimonials from your audience, telling me here's a piece of content that did really well, and it's not based on likes or views, but it's based on saves and shares. Like a media kit is really what can't I see easily by just looking at your channel.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. This was great information. I think students will be able to use this. They have to select an influencer for a brand for their project. So this is definitely going to be
Ooh.
great information to help them do that. Thank you so much for your time. Any final words or advice?
Yeah, this is it's a very fun industry to be in. I've been in it since the beginning. It's changing. It will still continue to change. This is still very much the beginning. So it's fun. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm just Brittany Hennessy on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, if you're like, when you're doing your project, you're like, oh, but what about this? I feel free to message me. It might take me a little bit to get back to you, but I will definitely answer your questions because I know when you get answers, you just have more questions, and always happy to help students like figure out where they fit in this space. But thank you so much for having me on and listening. And like if in a few months you want me to come back, happy to come back.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.